On this vote, the yeas are 233, the nays are 187, with one present. The previous question is ordered. The question is on adoption of the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, on that I request the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. Sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
Right now, a 5-minute vote on the rule for debating a motion to conference on the tax cut bill. Majority Leader Reid has said that he is not going to bring the Senate back for further work on this bill. It did pass in the Senate over the weekend, of course, bipartisan support. 89-10 was the vote tally.
Mr. Crowley votes no.
On this vote, the ayes are 231, the nays are 187, with one present. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Got to get to. House will be in order. The House shall be in order. Would all members please take their conversations from the floor? Clear the well of the House and the aisles. Would members please remove their conversations from the floor? Clear the well, clear the aisles. The House will be in order. Once again, would all members please remove your conversations from the floor? Clear the aisles. Well of the House. Members, respectfully, please take your conversations from the floor, clear the aisles, and let the House be in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to House Resolution 502, I call up H.R. 3630, the Middle Class Tax Relief and Job Creation Act of 2011, with the Senate amendments thereto, and I have a motion at the desk.
The clerk will report the title of the bill, designate the Senate amendments, and designate the motion.
Mr. Chairman, the House is not in order.
To provide incentives for the creation of jobs and for other purposes. Senate amendments. Motion offered by Mr. Camp of Michigan.
Pursuant to House Resolution 502, the motion shall be debatable for 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Ways and Means. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, and the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, each will control 30 minutes. Would all members please take your conversations from the floor so that the House can be in order? The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection, so ordered.
And, Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Without objection, gentleman is recognized.
The differences between the bipartisan House-passed Middle Class Tax Relief and Job Creation Act and what the Senate did so it could go on vacation could not be clearer. Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
Gentleman's correct. House will come to order. Gentleman from Michigan may continue.
The House bill puts the American people first. It provided certainty for middle-class families struggling to make ends meet by extending the payroll tax holiday. It provided certainty for those left behind in this economy by extending not only unemployment benefits for 1 year, but also the nation's welfare program. It provided certainty to seniors by ensuring their doctors would not see reimbursement rates slashed by nearly 30%. And it provided incentives for job creators looking for ways to hire more workers by extending tax relief. The Senate decided not to do any of this. Worse yet, in a rush to get home before the holidays, the Senate passed something that is totally unworkable. Yesterday, the Congress received a letter from the National Payroll Reporting Consortium, a nonprofit trade association whose members— Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
Gentleman's correct. The House is not in order. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, may continue.
The Congress received a letter from the National Payroll Reporting Consortium, a nonprofit trade association whose members cover more than 1/3 of the private sector workforce. Their letter says the Senate bill, and I quote, could create substantial problems, confusion, and costs affecting a significant percentage of U.S. employers and employees. The National Federation of Independent Business, the largest small business advocacy group in the nation, representing 350,000 small business owners nationwide and in every state, has issued a statement on the Senate bill. They say, and I quote, the 2-month payroll tax holiday would present a number of complications and costs that would disproportionately affect small businesses. In addition, many small employers do payroll processing in-house by hand, and this would require them to spend time to make these changes. With more than 5 million people working in the construction industry, this is what the Associated General Contractors have said about the Senate bill. And again, I'm quoting, this legislation will extend the payroll tax holiday in the most complex way possible, at the busiest time possible, provide little benefit to taxpayers, and unfairly hit the small member companies of the Associated General Contractors of America the hardest. Mr. Speaker,
The House will come to order. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, may continue.
as the Associated General Contractors say, this would provide little benefit to taxpayers, unfairly hit small member companies of the organization the hardest, and this legislation will add more uncertainty, more confusion for employers and employees, and more complexity, especially for small employers. Any economic benefit derived from the law would likely be eaten up by the inefficiency and confusion surrounding the bill's implementation." End quote. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that these letters, along with letters in opposition to the Senate bill from the National Roofing Contractors Association, which has over 4,000 members and is represented in every state, the Associated Builders and Contractors, which represent over 2 million American workers, and the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Council, with over 100,000 members, all be entered into the record.
Without objection. Gentleman from New York is recognized on his objection.
I probably won't object, but if the chairman is asking to put in the record the people that support the awkward position that the majority has taken, my question would be, would we be allowed to put in the record those people who are going through such economic pain and who so badly want to make certain that they don't get a raise in their taxes? Would we be able to send the letters that we get saying, please don't come home unless you give us a tax break? I'm asking, maybe the parliamentarian, whether or not I would be in order if I asked that. I certainly think the chairman is in order. But we all have received so many letters from our constituents. It's painful And I just wanted some equality in terms of how the record will look years from now as to how we treated those people who are the most vulnerable. And I know we all are concerned about that, even though the 2 months may be inconvenient for the electronic way they do these things, but I think the pain will be far more severe for those people who would have a tax increase.
Mr. Speaker,
Oh, yes, of course.
Regular order has been demanded. Does the gentleman from New York object to the request?
I said I reserved it. Maybe I didn't make it clear what my position was. I was reserving the right to
It's
object.
been demanded. The gentleman must
What is it?
suspend. Regular order has been demanded. The gentleman from New York must either object or withdraw his reservation.
Well, with all respect to my chairman, I withdraw. With all respect to my chairman, I withdraw my objection.
From New York withdraws. Gentleman from Michigan.
I thank the gentleman from New York for withdrawing.
Request is granted.
These letters, many of them were written to both parties, both leaders. I think Mr. Levin and I both received these letters. They were written to the Congress. It's routine that we do these, and on his own time the gentleman may do as he wishes. So I would say, Mr. Speaker, our economy is too weak, and the American people have been struggling for far too long for Congress not to work out our differences. America is not on vacation, nor should the Senate be. We have 2 weeks to find a solution and send something to the President for his signature. That is what House Republicans are proposing today. Let's look at the differences between the House and the Senate. The House extended unemployment for 13 months. The Senate bill extended unemployment benefits for only 2 months, meaning an estimated 4 million Americans could lose the extended unemployment benefits next year they would get under the House bill. The House reformed the unemployment program to focus it more on getting people the training and education they need to get back to work, not just handing out checks. The Senate did not. The House protected seniors' health care for the next 2 years by ensuring doctors in the Medicare program don't have their reimbursement cut by more than 27%. The Senate did this for only 2 months. The House provided a 1-year extension of the payroll tax holiday, ensuring a worker earning $50,000 next year has $1,000 more in their pocket. The Senate did this for only 2 months, meaning that the same worker would have less than $200 in their pocket or $800 less in take-home pay than under the House-passed bill. The House included a pay freeze for members of Congress and civilian federal workers. The Senate did not. The House put an end to welfare benefits being accessed at ATMs located in casinos, liquor stores, and strip clubs. The Senate did not. The House protected Social Security by reducing overpayments. The Senate did not. The House included a provision that saves taxpayers $9 billion by cracking down on fraud and abuse that is known to exist in a refundable tax credit program. The Senate did not. The House provided for economic growth and job creation in the high-tech industry through spectrum auctions. The Senate did not. The House cut taxes to promote business investment and hiring. The Senate did not. Mr. Speaker, while it may sound like there are great differences between the House and Senate bill, it's not a difference over policy. It's simply a difference between the House deciding to act and the Senate deciding not to act on so many items. The House bill includes common-sense reforms the American people want, and it adopts a number of the President's legislative initiatives, which represent the bipartisan cooperation the American people are demanding. All told, 90% of the House bill is paid for with policies the President has endorsed in one form or another. So what's really standing in our way? I've heard the President's people say that this breaks the agreement over the discretionary caps in the Budget Control Act. But look at that talking point. Those caps are adjusted only because we are proposing, as the President has before, to freeze the pay of members of Congress and other federal workers. Do the President and the Senate really want to risk unemployment benefits, a middle-class tax cut, and reimbursement to doctors treating seniors and those with disabilities because they don't want to freeze the pay for members of Congress and federal workers? Mr. Speaker, it's not too late. I urge all of my colleagues to support a 1-year extension of the payroll tax holiday, 1 year of unemployment benefits with critical reforms, and a 2-year extension of reimbursements for Medicare doctors. I urge my Democrat colleagues to name conference committee members to resolve the differences between the two bills. Conference committees are a Jeffersonian concept, and we would be wise to follow the model laid out by our founding fathers. If the Senate agrees to work together, we will help the American people back to work and get those struggling in this economy the help they need, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
I yield myself such time as I shall yield.
The gentleman's recognized. Without objection.
Let me put this very simply. This is a dishonest procedure. This is a ruse to avoid a straight up or down vote on the Senate bill and the 2-month extension. Why not hold a straight vote as indeed called for under regular order? That's the regular order. Because the Republican majority is afraid of a straight vote. They're afraid some Republicans would vote yes, and the Senate bill would pass, and the President would sign it, and it would become law today. And they don't want other Republicans on record voting against a payroll tax cut. That is the epitome of a ruse. 39 Republican senators, 39, all but a handful, voted for the bill before us. But what has happened since Saturday's bipartisan Senate bill that Speaker Boehner said was a good deal? Well, the sailors staged a mutiny, and the captain decided to surrender. He decided to join the mutiny to keep the ship from coming to port. But the problem is that on board are millions of passengers waiting to dock. This chart shows the numbers of passengers. 160 million Americans would see their taxes increased. 2.3 million Americans on board looking for work would lose their critical unemployment benefits. And 48 million seniors, Americans on Medicare, will have access to their doctors they know and they trust would have them jeopardized. So, I want it clear, for these people, all of these people, the Republican vote today is a vote to nowhere. Dick Lugar said that. I'm hopeful that there are a majority of Republicans and Democrats today who will proceed because it seems to me this is the best for the country as well as for all the individuals who are affected. Another Republican senator from Massachusetts, I quote, "The House Republicans plan to scuttle," that's the correct word, "the deal to help middle-class families is irresponsible and wrong. The refusal to compromise now threatens to increase taxes on hardworking Americans and stop unemployment benefits for those out of work. We cannot allow rigid partisan ideology and unwillingness to compromise stand in the way of working together for the good of the American people." And a third Republican senator, Senator Heller, a former colleague here of Nevada, there is, I quote, "There's no reason to hold up the short-term extension while a more comprehensive deal is worked out." And I want to quote a letter, a statement from Treasury about the notion that the 2-month extension cannot be implemented. And I quote, "While any short-term extension is bound to create some administrative complexities, It is feasible to implement the bipartisan bill. It is feasible to implement the bipartisan Senate bill. This is Treasury that is in charge of implementation of this. And the Treasury Department will work with employers to ensure the smoothest possible implementation. In the current economic situation, any such complications will be outweighed by the economic benefits of ensuring that taxes do not go up on 160 million Americans starting on January 1st, and I ask unanimous consent that this be placed in the record.
Without objection.
I want to close with what Harry Reid said. Take it seriously. 39 Republicans and 50 Democrats voted for the bill you won't let us vote on. You will not let us vote on. And I quote, "I have always sought a year-long extension. I've been trying to forge one for weeks." He could have said for months. "And I'm happy to continue negotiating one once we have made sure middle-class families will not wake up to a tax increase on January 1. So before we reopen negotiations on a year-long extension, the House of Representatives must protect middle-class families by passing the overwhelmingly bipartisan compromise that Republicans negotiated and was approved by 90% of the Senate," end of quotes. You are snubbing a bipartisan compromise. You are jeopardizing the lives of millions of taxpayers, millions of the unemployed, and millions of seniors. To keep harmony within your ranks, you are creating the possibility of immense discord within the United States of America. We're not going to let you do it. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 2 minutes to the distinguished chairman of the Health Subcommittee, the gentleman from California, Mr. Herger.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, taxpayers, small businesses, and health care providers need certainty and predictability to plan for the future. Unfortunately, the bill that's come back to us from this other chamber makes our usual habit of only one-year-long extensions look responsible by comparison. The Senate bill extends a number of key policies, including the PATS preventing a steep cut to doctors' Medicare payments for just 2 months. Mr. Speaker, we've been down this road before. Last year, under the previous majority, Congress passed 5 separate extensions of Medicare physician payments, mostly for just a month or two. Several times these patches missed the deadline, meaning payment cuts took effect and then had to be reversed. The failure to responsibly address the SGR created an unprecedented amount of chaos and confusion, both for doctors and the Medicare agency. House Republicans have been determined not to let this happen again. That's why we passed a fully paid-for 2-year fix. The American people are tired of Congress wasting time on political stunts and waiting till the last minute to cobble together half measures. Mr. Speaker, we still have 2 weeks before the end of the year to get this right, and there's no reason to think we'll do better in 2 months. I urge my colleagues to support the motion to go to conference so we can get a responsible solution. I yield back.
The gentleman from California yields back. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
I now yield 2 minutes to a very senior member of our committee, the very distinguished gentleman from New York, Mr. Rangel.
The gentleman from New York is recognized for 2 minutes.
I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
I am amazed at the ability of the majority to change its position so fast sometimes I wish Democrats had the ability to do this. It wasn't too long ago that there was objection for the taxpayers' holiday because of the impact on Social Security. Then there was objection to the unemployment insurance because people on the other side said people wouldn't go look for a job, that they would just stay home and watch television and receive the check. And of course, no one can deny that the doctors that give care to 48 million people deserve compensation for what they do. But being here as long as I have, I can see how in the majority, a handful of people will try to prove to their constituents that they're not marching in line with regular order, that they didn't come down here just to go along with the Senate or their leadership. And it's kind of rough to be a part of a party that is so widely split. I had only hoped that they could come up with a better excuse than the fact that 2 months is not enough time to prevent an increase in the taxes of so many, 160 million people. And I know that everyone in this chamber knows that if the American people that will suffer such a painful, insensitive act was to ask, would you want it for 2 months and then have the Congress to extend it? Would you take that, or would you want it to be for 1 year and the possibility of getting absolutely nothing? That is such a fearful, such a cruel thing to do, to gamble with other people's ability to be able to enjoy this holiday season as best they can. And so I don't think that there'll be any winners in what's going on today, but I hope that the regular Republicans would be able to see their way clear.
Gentleman's time expired.
Thank you.
Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Florida, Mr. West.
Gentleman from Florida is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, last week we voted to have a 1-year extension of a payroll tax holiday. Last week, we voted to have a 1-year extension of unemployment insurance with reforms. Last week, we voted to have a 2-year extension of the sustained growth rate for Medicare recipients and the doctors that provide that care. Last week, we voted for certainty, and we voted to restore confidence. We voted for a measure that was paid for, that will have no detriment or outcomes, negative outcomes to Social Security. Last week, we voted for job-creating policies and a bill that had 10 to 12 Obama-approved provisions. We are not afraid to vote, and if you don't want to accept this measure, then continue to vote no, just the same as our colleagues from across the aisle last week voted no. They voted no against what President Obama wanted. They voted no against what Senator Harry Reid said he wanted. They voted no against what Senator Chuck Schumer said he wanted. The Senate sent us back a 2-month extension, which is irresponsible and cannot be implemented, and it reflects abject incompetence. I urge all of my House colleagues to vote yes on this motion to disagree with the irresponsible Senate amendment and move to conference. Or do we just want to continue to see the American people suffer? Thank you.
Gentleman's time expired. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
I now yield a minute and a half to the distinguished gentleman from Washington, Mr. McDermott.
Without objection. Gentleman from Michigan is recognized. Washington is recognized. My apologies.
Mr. Speaker, a famous speech started the "We will little note nor long remember what we say here today, but the people," the Bible says, "by your deeds ye shall know them." Now, the Republicans have said that it's Christmas time. Kids are hanging their socks all over the world. And they're all getting up and hoping there'll be something in that sock on Christmas Day. And the Republicans have something to put in it. They have a lump of coal. They're going to say to 160 million people, we're going to boost your taxes. Here's your Christmas gift, right? We're going to say to 2.5 million unemployed people, no unemployment benefits because it's only for 2 months, and we can't. There's every excuse in the book you can give, but when they get up on Christmas, there's going to be coal in their sock. The working poor of this country are counting on that tax break. They've gone out and bought gifts for their kids, and they think they're going to pay for them because they have this tax reduction. And you're taking it away from them after they spent the money on the Christmas gifts. That's your lump of coal to the middle class. Now, for the seniors, the lump of coal is, we're not going to pay the doctors. We're going to cut the doctors by 25%. And doctors are going to say, I'm going to limit the number of seniors. Remember the lump of coal in November of 2012, folks. They gave it to you.
Gentleman's time's expired. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp is recognized.
At this time, I yield 1 minute to the distinguished Majority Leader.
Majority Leader is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentleman from Michigan. Mr. Speaker, tonight's the first night of Hanukkah, and Christmas is fast approaching for families across America. And what do the families see coming out of Washington? Dysfunction, and half of Congress unwilling to do its job. Mr. Speaker, we were elected to work for the best interests of the American people. And in this tough economy, middle-class Americans and working families need to know that their taxes won't be going up at any point next year. So far, the House has passed a bipartisan year-long plan to ensure that taxes do not go up. The Senate, on the other hand, has passed a 2-month plan. According to experts, the 2-month plan is simply unworkable. Families, employers, and workers can't live their lives month to month. Washington needs to stop adding confusion and more uncertainty to people's lives. I think we can all agree that the 2-month concept doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Mr. Speaker, bottom line, a 2-month patch is irresponsible. That's why the House is taking a stand. We believe all Americans deserve certainty. We want a year-long extension of the payroll tax cut, which will prevent a tax increase on every American with a job. Luckily, Mr. Speaker, everyone claims to agree. In fact, the President himself said it would be inexcusable not to extend the payroll tax cut for a year. The Leader of the Senate says that we should be working on extending the payroll tax for a year, but only after the new year. Mr. Speaker, a great Virginian once said, "Never put off tomorrow what you can do today." That man was Thomas Jefferson. So let us dedicate ourselves to that spirit. People across our great country are tired of hearing why Washington cannot do things. They're seeing day in and day out that Washington is not working together. But we have the ability to give them some hope. Let's show the American people that there's a reason to believe that we can work together and deliver results. Truth is, we're not far apart on this issue. The negotiators got extremely close. We owe some stability and good tax policy to the hard-working people of this country, not more gimmicks and political games. Today, this House will vote to go to conference and work these differences out in regular order. We need to come together in a responsible manner to find common ground where we can accomplish everyone's goal of a year-long payroll tax extension. Mr. Speaker, there is no reason why the House, the Senate, and the President cannot spend the next 2 weeks working to get that done. America will be waiting. And I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
I now yield 2 minutes to another distinguished member of our committee, Mr. Neal from the great state of Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. Levin. Mr. Speaker, we'd be very happy in this institution if just the Speaker and the House and the Majority Leader could work together. There was a deal over the weekend. The Speaker of the House accepted the Senate's version of that agreement, only to discover in a conference call that he had to back down. The chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, my friend, he doesn't believe what they're doing here for one moment. They're courting disaster. This is the season of Advent and Christmas for Christians. Hanukkah begins today. It is the quest for light in our lives, to enlighten the American people as to what is taking place here today. 160 million Americans are going to lose this tax cut. Organized labor and management, they do this all the time. You have a cooling off period. You get to a more benign time, and you negotiate in good faith. You've seen what's happened here. A radical element has seized the Republican Party. The senator from Massachusetts, Senator Brown, is on the front page of the Boston Globe today criticizing his own party. Dean Heller criticizing his own party. Richard Lugar criticizing his own party. We're arguing today about unemployment benefits in this season for members of the American family who are going to lose those benefits. We're arguing about a tax cut for middle-income Americans today, 160 million strong, for doctors who care for the most vulnerable amongst us, the Medicare patients, over their reimbursement rates. When you consider what Republicans did during the Bush years with those tax cuts for wealthy people, they never flinched for one moment. The rich were rich and they weren't going to take it anymore. And they were going to reinforce that idea. Cut taxes 10 times in 10 years for the wealthiest among us. We should be voting on what the Senate did. No chicanery. Put that motion in front of us today and let's have an up or down vote and then explain it to the American people.
Gentleman's time's expired. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the distinguished chairman of the Trade Subcommittee, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Brady.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. President, Senate Democrat leaders, don't vacation until you finish your job. Families and small businesses need tax relief for a full year, not just for 2 months. The House, we've already done our job. We've already passed a full 1-year extension of the payroll tax holiday. We've included unemployment reforms for those who are out of work, paying our local doctors fairly in Medicare for a full 2 years, unlocking the Keystone Pipeline and cutting spending to completely pay for it. We've done our job. But the Democrat-led Senate shortchanged the American public by rushing through a partial 2-month extension and then hurrying home for their Christmas vacations. That's irresponsible. Families and small businesses need to be able to plan with confidence for a full year, not just 2 measly months. President Obama said, you said, Mr. President, just last week that the American people deserve a 1-year bill. Our Democratic friends said a 1-year bill. The Democrats said a 1-year bill. Well, House Republicans are going to hold you to your word by moving forward today to a conference committee to work out the differences. We're going to work it out, not next year, not when you get around to it, but now. That's the next step in the constitutional process, and we, House Republicans, are willing to work through the holidays to make sure we get the job done for the American public. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Members are reminded to address their remarks to the chair. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
1 minute. I now yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Georgia, a very distinguished member of our committee, Mr. Lewis.
The gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my friend and my colleague, Mr. Levin, for yielding. If we go home without passing the bipartisan Senate bill, we disgrace ourselves and this Congress. We are out of time. We cannot go into this holiday season without helping our unemployed brothers and sisters. We cannot keep our seniors from seeing their doctors. We cannot allow taxes to go up for millions of Americans. What is happening here today is shameful It is a disgrace. It is unreal. It is unbelievable. We can do better. If we fail today, how will you face your neighbor, family who are suffering? Where is your compassion? Where is your heart? Where is your soul? I say, vote no on this motion and pass the Senate bipartisan bill.
Gentleman's time's expired. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
At this time, I yield 4 minutes to the distinguished conference chairman, the gentleman from Texas.
Gentleman from Texas, recognized for 4 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, we all need to be reminded why we're here in the first place. We're here because the President's economic policies have failed. They failed this nation. Ever since he was elected, unemployment has been at, near, or above 9%. And the people suffer. And so that's why I believe almost every member of this body believes that we must extend the payroll tax holiday. That's not the debate, Mr. Speaker. What is most curious, though, is our President. Our President has said it would be inexcusable for Congress not to further extend this middle-class tax cut for the rest of the year. He didn't say 60 days. He said the rest of the year. The Democratic leader has said that she intends the fight to extend these provisions for a full year. And so, Mr. Speaker, I guess I'm confused. I hear my friends on the other side of the aisle say they want to do this for a year. They say they want to do it for a year. They're just not willing to vote to do it for a year. That's most curious, Mr. Speaker. I don't think I understand it. It's what the President asked for. It's what the American people deserve. They don't want us to punt the ball. They want us to do our job. And so there's no point of contention on whether or not this should be extended. But the question is, are we going to do it for a full year? Or are we going to punt the ball down the field and once again disappoint the American people? Here's the next point of contention. We stand ready to work over the holidays to get this done. That's the question. Are you willing to work over the holidays, or are you not willing to work over the holidays? The American people, most of them are going to have to work over the holidays. Why shouldn't we be willing to do this? And, you know, Mr. Speaker, I guess it's just curious how many people seem to be unaware that there's this thing called a conference committee. Since the dawn of the Republic, these are how differences are settled between the House and the Senate. If you don't remember your Civics 101, maybe if you have small children like I do, you can go back and watch the Schoolhouse Rocks video. It's very clear. All we're asking is that the Democrats will appoint conferees and come negotiate in good faith. Except the Senate Democrat leader said he wouldn't do it. The House Democratic leader said she wouldn't do it. So it kind of begs the question, Mr. Speaker, do they want to make laws that benefit the American people at a time of need, or do they want to perpetuate a campaign issue that maybe they believe helps their campaigns? That's really the question. And then last but not least, Mr. Speaker, we ought to pass laws that actually work around here. ABC News reported last night, quote, holiday passed by Senate, pushed by President, cannot be implemented properly, experts say. Well, isn't that interesting? The National Payroll Reporting Consortium that handles payroll for about a third of the private economy said, quote, this could create substantial problems, confusion, and cost affecting a significant percentage of U.S. employers and employees. The Associated Builders of Contractors, the people who go out and actually build things in America, have said, quote, this sort of temporary fix underscores Congress's uneven, ad hoc approach toward the economy and causes more harm than good for America's job creators. The leading building trade association in the nation said their 60-day plan will cause more harm than good. Mr. Speaker, House Republicans have passed a good and reasonable bill. It's 1 year. It does what the President asked us to do. It does what the American people ask us to do. It's actually paid for. It doesn't increase the deficit. And it blocks tax increases. I don't know how my friends on the other side of the aisle think we're going to create jobs with temporary tax increases, with permanent tax increases. It doesn't happen. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
It's now my privilege to yield 2 minutes to another member of our committee, the distinguished gentleman from California, Javier Becerra.
Gentleman from California is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. My friends, we've seen this movie before. House Republicans once again are driving our government and our economy to the edge of the cliff. And this time they've placed 160 million workers and 48 million seniors in the front seat of that car. House Republican leaders are refusing to allow 435 members of this House to vote on a bipartisan proposal passed by 89 out of 100 senators next door. My Republican colleagues know that this bipartisan bill passed by the Senate would pass on this floor, and it would save working Americans from having their taxes increased during the holidays. The truth is, Republicans are feuding amongst themselves. House Republicans are fighting with Senate Republicans, and quite frankly, they're fighting with Republicans throughout this country because the majority of them support the President's payroll tax cut. Mr. Speaker, once again, the people, Republicans and Democrats alike, are way ahead of the politicians. They want us to get our work done and get it done now. Let's stop showing the American people B-rated movies on the floor of the House and pass the Senate bipartisan legislation. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
I yield 3 minutes to a distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, the gentleman from Louisiana, Dr. Boustany.
Gentleman from Louisiana is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank Chairman Camp for yielding time to me. Mr. Speaker, before I came to Congress, I was a practicing cardiovascular surgeon with many years' experience. It was not unusual to get called out in the middle of the night to do an emergency or on a holiday. Just like doctors all over this country, we're there 24/7 to deal with problems. Now, I remember distinctly one night, Christmas Eve, in fact, I was getting ready to sit down with my family for dinner and got called to see an 85-year-old Cajun gentleman with a very large family who had a ruptured aneurysm, and he was in shock. I spent the entire night operating on this man. We saved his life. Long story short, we have a duty, an obligation to our patients. And by God, to put physicians in a position of seeing a 28% cut in reimbursement is just untenable. Why? It's not because of the physicians. It's because of patients who are going to lose access. Medicare beneficiaries, seniors, those with disabilities who will lose access to care in a situation where we're already seeing that eroding access. We have an obligation to act because the consequences are not good with regard to all these provisions that we're trying to extend. This House passed a bill last week. It was a very responsible bill with good reforms, and it gives a 2-year stability period for physicians and for those patients who desperately need this care. And what did the Senate do? What did the Senate do? The Senate capitulated, the Senate caved, and the Senate basically just gave up with contempt for the American people. That's what it comes down to. They basically are content with allowing confusion and disruption and chaos and uncertainty for patients who deserve good, high-quality care. They did the same thing to those who depend on these unemployment benefits. And the same for those who depend on this payroll tax cut during this holiday season. We're going to pass a bill today that basically says we want to go to conference to resolve these differences. And the Senate has an obligation to the American people to stand with us and follow its constitutional duty to go to conference to resolve these disputes, these differences, in a time-honored way. Mr. Speaker, the Senate has an obligation to the American people. The Senate has an obligation to carry out its duty to the American people. We can get this right. Let's do it and be done with it. But let's get it done, and let's get it done right. And I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For information, the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, has 10 minutes remaining. The gentleman from Michigan, 10 and a half minutes remaining. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, has 15 and a half minutes remaining. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
Thank you. I now yield 2 minutes to another distinguished member of our committee, the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Blumenauer.
The gentleman from Oregon is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman. Some say that the House Republican leadership pulled the plug on the Senate bipartisan bill because they were afraid of their Republican Tea Party freshmen. Perhaps. But what is clear is that we're not being allowed by the Republican leadership to vote on the Senate bill because the Republicans are afraid of their moderates, their independents, their reasonable un-hardliners. The measure of this Congress is that the House doesn't act until they are forced to as a result of self-imposed, crisis-induced deadlines. And then if they can't get their own way on an agenda that could never be passed through regular order in both chambers and signed by the President, then they throw a tantrum. And what we are dealing with today is a legislative tantrum. Now, I don't like the 2-month extension. It has some difficulties and uncertainties. But there would be far more uncertainty and difficulties if there were a 2-week gap or a 2-month gap where 700,000 people in early January will lose their unemployment benefits, 2 million in the next 2 months. If we simply would follow regular order, allow a vote on the Senate, we could build on this glimmer of bipartisanship from the other body. Allow your members to vote. Who knows where it could lead? We actually may be able to solve some of these long-term problems. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
I would ask if Mr. Levin would like to yield again so we can even up the time.
Surely, thank you.
Gentleman
I now
reserves.
yield 2 minutes to another distinguished member of our committee, Mr. Pasquale, of the great state of New Jersey.
Thank you.
Gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
Almost good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. This is not a fraternity house. This is the House of Representatives. Yet what have we wrought? I heard someone, 2 people say on this floor, quoted the President of the United States, they should apologize to him immediately, that the President was urging us to vote a 1-year plan. He wasn't asking us to vote on your plan for a year. You know what he thinks about what you proposed, and it didn't even come up in the Senate. In fact, 39 Republicans, that's 82% of the entire delegation of the Republican Senate, and 89% of the total Senate voted for this compromise. I know you hate the word. Compromise does not mean that you surrender your values or your principles. Compromise is what was the basis of the forefathers. That's how we got a Constitution. Nobody was happy with that Constitution. They didn't get everything they want, and you're not going to get everything you want. So you better get it out of your head right now. Through the Speaker. Through the Speaker. Majority Leader, wonderful cliches, he forgets that only 2 years ago, a Republican member of the House sponsored a 2-month payroll tax holiday and had 59 co-sponsors. We have amnesia, selective amnesia. He changed his tune this Saturday. He was against that idea of a short-term gimmick. This Saturday he said it's a good deal. It's a victory, he said. He claimed victory. Reminds me of another victory I heard a couple of years ago. Once the same members of this party in this caucus rebel, the Speaker reversed his course, keeping the payroll tax cut in place as we figure out a way to extend it for the year reduces uncertainty among employers and the families in my district, the workers in my district, and I ask that we reconsider what we're doing today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Have a wonderful